Peace to the gods, Let's go. We ain't got no time. We got no time. We're gonna get this started. Let's get this going. It's 6:30, man. We're gonna share this bad boy. Let's get the Facebook followers coming in. Let me go to YouTube real quick. We are simultaneously streaming on Facebook and YouTube. Welcome to the Lighthouse. If you haven't subscribed already to the YouTube page, can you please come on in and do what you got to do. I'm about to share it to Facebook for those who don't know yet. We already got 21 people on. Welcome, welcome, y'all. Welcome. I see you. I see you. Let me get the link up. Make sure we get the here. Y'all know how we do. You know what I'm saying? So today, we were supposed to have Brother Garfield on. He's going to come next week. He wasn't able to make it this week, but next week we'll have him on, and we'll get on to we'll get into the Bitcoin discussion. But if you haven't already, go ahead and link up to the YouTube. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Today's discussion, we're going to be dealing with some of the questions that you guys put in my inbox. A lot of y'all sent some topics that you would like to talk about inside my inbox, so I'm going to be answering some of those today. And I've had some really good discussions offline with several people about certain things, and you know, you guys got some really good feedback coming to me, and I appreciate it. I really do. I mean, I really wish I could hear some of the conversations that we have offline. A lot of them I really can't get into them, but we have great conversations as far as building, and a lot of it leads up to what we're going to be talking about on the show. So continue to send me your topics of what you want to talk about, and hopefully you'll be one of the people that I shout out. So let me pull up something here. Let me see what we got. Try to find some of these here. I got so many. I gotta scroll through these joints. Man, got my brother Makakuvu here.
Udamakiya. How's everyone?
Talk to the people.
Welcome aboard. As we moving into 2018, ending the year out, 2017, 6,257 going into 6,258. We're going to be moving forward with an agenda that will allow you to expand your consciousness into the solar Kemetic time consciousness. The solar Kemetic time consciousness is that time consciousness that says our year is 6,257 going into the new year, which is August 3rd, which will be 6,258. That time consciousness predates every other calendar in use today, the Jewish calendar, the Chinese calendar, etc. Particularly the Christian calendar of 2017. So our effort is going to launch the Ma'at Festival, March 23rd, 24th, and 25th at the Shrine of the Black Madonna. Hope that you can make it. I'm talking with some people now. Some of you might know the Matrix. I'm talking with some people now who are responsible for that production, and I'm trying to get them to come to that festival, the Ma'at Festival, the Festival of Truth at the Shrine of the Black Madonna, a Black on Purpose television production. This is LIWeb TV, the Lighthouse production. And we're going to be syndicating this with Black on Purpose television. So Brother Jamar is going to have a presence on the screen with us as well on the Roku box. So again, I say welcome Makakuvu Ali El Bey to the Lighthouse. And I want to thank my brother here for allowing me to sit with him again.
Absolutely.
And grace me with his genius.
Absolutely. I wouldn't say genius, but I'd say we connected on the same frequency. You know, not there yet. I have not arrived yet, people. But I will say, you know, I appreciate always being in the presence of elders. I always appreciate that. I always love being in the presence of divine wisdom, people that have been around, you know, and have tried and tested the principles that we stand on. I think it's key to see the fruits of labor, you know, so that we can we need successors, you know, we need people that we can look up to and say, okay, you know, 10, 20 years from now, what's this going to look like? You know what I mean? This is what you need in your life. And I think there's not enough of that in the black community, in the conscious community, in the African and the American African community. And that brings us to our subject today. The subject today comes from is a topic that was brought up by D. Valdez, one of our followers. Her name is D. Valdez. Shout out to her. Her topic is, how do we improve the black family without blaming each other? How do we improve the black family without blaming each other? Wow. Shout out to D. Valdez for that topic. You know, when we come into consciousness, let's just say before we start, let's not even put consciousness on the table, right? Let's just talk about in general. When you want to do better in life, and everybody, I would think, no matter what walk of life, wants to do better for their family. They want the best for their family. Specifically, the black family has gone through a lot of things that most families don't go through on a regular basis. I think it's safe to say that by now, when we're dealing with racism, classism, you know, our government, politics, the judicial system. The things that we go through are abnormal compared to the rest of the world. It's in astronomical numbers. Not that they don't go through it, but not in the numbers disproportionate that we do. So when we're trying to do better for our families and raise the consciousness of our families, a lot of times the things that we've gone through cause us to look at one another as if they're the problem. So I greatly understand what D. Valdez is asking. What is the solution to that? And I think this is a perfect question for someone such as yourself, because our elders, they went through more than what we went through. Let's make sure everybody can see you. They went through more than what we went through with less resources. We didn't have the internet to talk to one another and be able to build with one another and raise each other's consciousness like we do today on a super fast level. You know, everything is instant gratification. They didn't have that back in the day, and they had to overcome even worse adversities than now. When you're dealing with segregation to where you can't even get your education at all. Now we can get information freely. You understand? So I want to hear from Makakuvu. What do you think is the best way for us as American Africans, as black people, to approach this situation of bettering our families and doing it in a way that we don't blame each other?
Well, let's address it from the perspective of healing.
Okay.
And when you talk about healing, you have to recognize that healing is in 4 dimensions: spiritual, psychological, emotional, and physical. Spiritual healing, psychological healing, emotional healing, and physical healing. When you talk about healing, you have to reconcile the fact that our mind is not our mind.
Right.
The conversation in the language that you and I are speaking right now is not our language, and we're not speaking from the level of our innate consciousness.
Right.
So you look at the conditions upon which our people have navigated through, and most of us like to say, well, N is the Kemetic word for us.
Okay.
And periodically you'll hear me use that as opposed to we.
Yes.
Because we is a word that comes from a German word, weir, W-E-I-R.
Yes.
where means for Jewish men only.
Mm.
So when you and I say we, and it was Dougie Fresher's nephew, 8-year-old young man, Imhotep,
Yeah.
that hit me to that.
That's crazy. So it wasn't even meant for what they call Gentiles.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you look at that concept, most of us say, well, in are the strong ones. Let's qualify that. No. In are the weak ones.
Yeah.
The strong ones are dead.
Right.
The strong ones are dead. Those of us who inhabit the planet now as a result of going through the enslavement and the incarceration are the ones who went along to get along.
Right. Right.
So there's some realities that people have to accept in order to heal.
Yeah.
You cannot heal if you don't recognize the dis-ease at which you live in.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And the dis-ease of mind, I did a session several years back in Brooklyn. It was called The Disease of the So-Called African American Negro.
Right.
What do I mean by that? Well, let's look at it from the perspective of an abusive marriage.
Right.
In a relationship, constantly abused, constantly demeaned, constantly degenerated, constantly defiled, but refused to leave.
Right. That's a sickness in itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So therein, what he just said defined the sickness of the so-called African American Negro.
Yeah.
You cannot be an African American. African American is not an ethnic group.
Doesn't even exist.
Okay?
Yeah.
When you look at the so-called African American Negro, the definition of the African American invariably says that the African American is a descendant of slaves.
Right.
You can't be a descendant of slaves.
Right.
You are descendants of people who were enslaved.
That's right.
Slave is not an ethnic group.
That's right.
So you can't be a descendant of something that they never were.
Right. That's powerful.
Okay? So when you look at it from that perspective, and you take the psychosis from which our people are suffering in, and I'm going to say this, and some of y'all are going to get mad. And I'm going to say it anyway. You look at the psychosis that our people are suffering in. Go all over the world, fighting wars, killing other folks that never done anything to us. Come back to America, or Mexim, one of the names of this land before it was renamed the United States Incorporated of America. Or Mexim Guatama Almoricanos. Come back here and won't lift a finger to protect our women, children, and elders.
That's right. That's
so how you going to tell me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what kills.
How you going to tell me that you're free? I'm going to drop this on you. None are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. None are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. I read that quote when I was 15 years old, over 50 years ago. Never left me.
Yeah.
So when you look at the marriage of the so-called African American Negro to America, the African American Negro is in an abusive relationship.
That's right. That's right.
You're beat up, you're denigrated, your woman is taught that she's better than the man, which is fine, but that's your wealth. So you have to be able to reconcile the reality of the psychosis of mind. Now, this is something that you need to chew on for a little while. Because right now, you have Donald Trump in office of the presidency of the United States. And I say Donald Trump not to disrespect him, but I say Donald Trump because Donald Trump is trampling on the office of the presidency and the White House. That's why I say Donald Trump. I'm not disrespecting his name. I'm telling you what he's doing. And what he has done is shown the world the real America.
Right.
The real America. Now, here's the reality of this. Donald Trump has put in place the psychosis among Europeans in America, whereby they want to begin ethnic cleansing. They want to begin ethnic cleansing. You want to find out where I'm getting this from? When you open up Yahoo daily news stories, read the comments. Read the comments. White America is an armed camp. White America is an armed camp. Ethnic cleansing begins with policy decisions.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay? Now, they've made some policy decisions immediately with the travel ban. You got the DACA, the Dreamers. You got ICE that have gone into the areas where the hurricanes hit and are taking people, arresting them as a result of them being displaced in the hurricane and sending them out the country. Homeland Security has already, said that anybody that is an undocumented immigrant won't get assistance in the hurricane from FEMA.
That's crazy. And it's almost like you're being criminalized for things that are out of, it's not even almost, it is. You're being criminalized for things that are out of your control. And that's ultimately the same thing that we go through as black people here in America. The problems that we have in our home is a trickle-down effect of what we experience in the world. And ultimately, when we come home, that stress just fills the room. It fills the house. You know, this is why we always have to constantly try to balance ourselves. You know, when I give my teachings, I always teach on the chakras and things of that nature because I understand the battle, like he said, is partially spiritual. Like the physicality part, that's usually the last part.
That's right.
Right? It usually ends in the physical battle. It usually starts in that spiritual realm, around there, the mindset, the psyche, first and foremost. This is why a lot of the teachings that I give you is about controlling your mind, being in control of the decisions that you can make ultimately that are your choice. You understand? A lot of times we feel like we have to do this decision. But most of the time we don't have to make that decision. We make this decision based on the part that we're playing in the matrix, the things of this matrix that we've accepted into our lives that we don't even need anymore. So when we end up blaming one another, really it's because we're not on the same page, I think. I think that when we blame our partner or we blame our mother, our father, our loved ones on why we aren't excelling as a family, as black people, it's because some have grasped the concept of consciousness and we're ascending while others aren't on the same page. And they just want to get by. Like you said, there were some who stayed here, who are here now, the weak ones, it's a lot of them, who just want to go along with the program, right? There's only a select few, I can say maybe 1 in 5 or maybe even less than that, who accepts the fact that, hey, listen, this program is not working for us. We can't keep doing what we've been doing. Otherwise, we're going to keep getting what we've been getting. At some point, you got to switch. You got to switch the program. You got to flip it on them. You got to flip the script. So I think some of us have become accustomed to it. We've lived our entire lives in that paradigm. You mainly see this when there's a bridging the gap deficit, right? And I think this is why what's happening here. When we have two different generations coming together and talking about these issues, I think this is why it's special, because you don't see this in the real world. You understand?
Absolutely.
You don't see the younger generation dealing with not even the older generation, but even 5, 10 years older than them, they don't deal with that generation. It's a total generation gap. It's like a missing piece of the puzzle, you know? And I think this is why we aren't able to build families, because family building was essentially a part of an older structure. Now there's really no family building anymore. By the time you're 16, 17 years old, you got to get out of the house and get on your own. Huh? You're not allowed to have a house full of black people, 15 black people, all living one another. The most you're going to find in an African household is maybe 4 to 6 people, max. Max. Why is that? Because the scenario here and the culture here is as soon as you turn of age, 16, 17, all of a sudden you're supposed to be on your own, whether you go off to college or whether you go and you get a job. It's time for you to leave the house, right? Any other community that you go to, you can go into the white community, the Hispanic community, the Japanese community, the Asian community, no matter what community you go to, you will find family living amongst one another, operating under the same business. They pass businesses down to their children, and they all work together in a family-orientated business. When you go to the Chinese restaurant, you don't see black people making the damn wings. You see the Chinaman making his wings, and you see his son and his daughter chefing it up in the back as well. Or they're the ones that's taking your money, right? They all work together for structure. It's a system. But with us, as soon as we get of age, we say, hey, you're going to have to get out and find you a job. And usually it's not being an entrepreneur. It's usually working for a different race.
Now, I want to address how this began. See, because, again, when you talk about the enslavement of our people, they call it slavery. So they take that term and apply it to the group as if the group is the ethnic group of slaves, okay? Our enslavement has been taught to us that it began in 1619. And the physical part, we're talking about healing now. See, we're answering that question. Let's repeat that question, please.
We'll go back to the question. Word for word.
Let's go back to that question.
D. Valdez says, how did the black family without blaming each other? Without blaming each other.
So now, invariably, we've been taught, and has been taught, that our enslavement began in 1619. And there's a passage in Genesis in the Bible that talks about that. Okay? I'm going to address that a little later. But right now, I want to address the beginning of our enslavement. Our enslavement did not begin in 1619. Our enslavement began over 2,000 years ago. That is why I said to you, the time, the solar Kemetic time consciousness, the solar Kemetic, Kemetic means ancient Egypt. Egypt is a translation of a Greek word, Egyptus. Our enslavement began over 2,000 years ago when our people lost the ability to read, write, teach, and speak the language of our ancient ancestors, which is the Medu Neter, the Medu Neter, the spiritual words. Medu means words, Neter means spirit. So our inability to communicate in our natural tongue, and the Medu Neter is the language of our spiritual DNA. Our inability to communicate in the language of our ancestors has put us in the mindset that what our religious context has to derive from is from what our enslavement, our enslavers have taught us. Now, how can you call yourself free when you embrace the religion of your enslavers as if that religion is truth and you fight to believe the lie? You fight to believe the lie. So when you want to be able to liberate the consciousness and heal the physical condition, one has to address the spiritual enslavement if you want to be for real with this. If you just want to play games, everybody, when you pray, everybody say amen.
That's right.
Everybody say amen. And somebody say, well, amen means so be it. Amen is a name.
That's right.
It's a name. And I'm going to tell you how deep that name is. Listen to this. I'm going to do it again. Listen to this. The in-breath through the nose. The out-breath through the nose. Your very breath is the name Amen. Every time you breathe, you speak the name Amen. I'm healing people. I'm not talking about just protesting. I'm not talking about Black Lives Matter. I'm not talking about being out in the street carrying the sign. I'm not talking about chanting, no justice, no peace. Okay? I'm talking about the liberation of your spiritual consciousness. That consciousness that will allow our people to shift the paradigm. That's why I spoke and said the time consciousness, the solar Kemetic time consciousness. Our ancestors marked the days of the year based upon the rising of a star. The European called it the Sirius star. Our ancestors called it Sapdet, the rising of Sapdet. On August 3rd, it rises in the west.
Shout out to Michael McGee. He said, look up the word citizen in the law dictionary, and you will find that black people cannot be considered a citizen under law. And I think that's a powerful statement, brother. Shout out to Michael McGee.
Black's Law Dictionary.
Yeah, the Black Law Dictionary. I think that you'll hear a lot of Moors play with the Black Law Dictionary a lot. I think that's an important statement because a lot of us have the wrong definition of what a citizen is, and we actually are subscribing to something that we have nothing to do with. And I think the black community has a lot of that going on, not just from citizenship when you're dealing with that, but also when you're dealing with politics, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. It's not like your vote is really that much of a decision maker. And our religions as far as that, and which God we're going to worship. How are we going to worship the God of our oppressors? It just doesn't make sense. And I'm glad that he said that, because that was actually one of the scriptures that I was reading today, and I was trying to break it down, and I was sitting in my car before I came in here when it says, obey your earthly masters in Ephesians. And then I said, well, maybe they made a mistake. So, I started looking around and saying, then they did it again in Colossians. And I'm like, no, this wasn't no damn mistake. Right. They want you to obey your earthly masters and stay in that paradigm and that mindset, thinking that this is the wave. There's some pastors that think that slavery was the bond. We would have never known Jesus had we not gone through slavery. That they are sermons that are being preached on that. That's the indoctrination that we're going through. I don't think people realize how serious this is. You understand? They don't realize how serious this is. And it's not just even us as black people. Don't get it twisted. Because, see, they'll take down their own people, too, just to fit that agenda. But we're the engine. Yeah? You see what I'm saying? We don't exist in it. Then it don't exist at all. We make everything cool, right? Especially our women. Our black women. If the black woman accepts it, then it becomes universally cool in the United States. Universally cool. No matter what. From the music that we listen to what we dress like, to our sexual agendas, to how we make money, anything that the black woman accepts becomes cool. Watch this as the world spins and as time goes on and the older that you get, and you'll see. That's why when you're dealing with BET, you're dealing with the mind state of a black woman. That's why it's dangerous for our women to watch those programs, because they're the ones who dictate what's going to be hot in the United States, what's going to be hot in the African American community, in the American African community. They're the ones who dictate that. Because if it's hot to them, then we're going to follow suit. You see all our little boys running around with skinny jeans? That's because they mamas accept it. Point blank. If mama's not having you wearing that going to school, then it ain't going to be cool. I don't care how many people's wearing it. You understand? We got to start waking up and start realizing the power that we have, even as adults. Even as adults. I like to consider myself a cool dad. You know what I'm saying? I stay in tune with what's going on. You know, I'm on the internet, I'm seeing what's going on, seeing what the kids is liking. You know, I might dance with them a little bit, and, you know, we make fun in the house and stuff like that. You know, but it's important that you have that relationship with your children so that you bridge that gap. I think ultimately that's what's going to help us out as a family when we dealing with family, because you're dealing with all different generations. You have to master the art of bridging the gap. You got mother, father, son, daughter, grandparents, great-grandparents, some of us cousins, and they're all different ages, all different genres, some of them even all different walks of life, because only the black families are separated as it is. The other families ain't separated like that. So we always have to be in tune with what's going on and what people are going through at all times within our own family, more importantly. You understand? So shout out to Michael McGee for that comment. I want to go into another comment here. James Miller said, how do we maintain the truth when the family doesn't want to hear it? And I think that segues into what I just said. Why don't they want to hear it? You got to ask the question, why they don't want to hear it.
And that goes to fighting to believe the lie. Okay? And one of the things that has to be realized in order to effectuate the spiritual liberation of our consciousness, one has to realize and take on the persona of a farmer. You know what a farmer is. A farmer tills the land, plants seed, grows food. It's a foolish farmer that plants a seed today and goes out tomorrow with the expectation of harvesting the fruit. You have to look at the mind of our people as the soil, as fertile soil. And you have to take seeds and drop those seeds and let those seeds germinate. Because you have to remember, the condition of our consciousness is such that it is so ingrained with falsehood that the falsehood is taken as truth.
Yeah, when you plant seeds of untruth, they grow into trees. And they get deep. And then eventually they bear fruit. What we're dealing with is not the seeds, not the tree, but a full-grown blossom fruit that has already fallen to the ground. You understand? This thing has been set in motion for hundreds of years now.
Absolutely.
Do you know how long it takes for a tree to grow? Hundreds of years to be that strong and deeply rooted. This thing has been sitting and settling on the hearts and the DNA. We're dealing with the DNA, the second and third generation born Africans that have had this deep rooted. When they were babies, watching their fathers being whipped on the whipping post, they already done grew up and had kids. And then those kids had kids. And then those kids had kids. And now you are that generation having kids. And now we're just now waking up, according to the frequency that we're on, the Schumann resonance is now raising. We're just now waking up and looking back on all of this like, wait a minute.
Right.
We've been in this for a long time.
Over 2,000 years, people.
Come on, y'all.
Over 2,000 years.
That's a long
Enslavement began
time.
over 2,000 years ago. It didn't begin in 1619. It began over 2,000 years ago. And like the brother said a little while ago, if what has been taught to us and ingrained in us ain't worked in 2,000 years, what does that tell you? It ain't gonna work. It ain't supposed to work for you. It's not supposed to work for us. It's supposed to do exactly what it's doing, keeping us the so-called disease of the African American Negro. In order to heal from this, one has to have the courage, number one. You have to have the courage to want to heal.
Yeah, I agree. You ever seen how people in AA meetings when Alcoholics Anonymous, when they're trying to kick the habit? What's the first thing they got to do? I'm going to tell you the first thing they got to do. They go in there, and they got to go in front of a group of people that's also in the meeting, that's either drug addicts, whatever. It could be anger management. It could be alcohol. And when they stand in front of the group, they got to say, hi, I'm Jamar Milton, and I'm an alcoholic. They have to first acknowledge the fact that they're an alcoholic.
That's right.
You understand? Our generation that we're dealing with don't even believe that slavery has happened. They don't even believe that it actually went down. So how the hell are we going to liberate them from their enslavement when they don't even believe that they came from Africa? They don't even believe that their bloodline's first drip came from off the shores of Sierra Leone. They don't even know.
Don't want to know.
And they don't believe it.
Right.
They say, no, show me a slave boat. Show me I don't see no slave boats.
Well,
and then we sit there looking like, what?
One of the first slave ships was named Jesus Christ.
That's right. It was called Jesus. So when you in church, at your A&B church, and you singing, good ship Jesus coming to take me home, they ain't talking about Jesus coming from the clouds. That's a hymnal. It's a slave hymnal talking about the actual boat that already took their family members that converted to Jesus Christ on Cape Town. They already left, and they wait and say, I can't wait for the boat to come back. For the good ship Jesus to come on and get me. They talking about a real boat, y'all.
One of the other things that our people like to sing is Amazing Grace. Written by a man who had a ship full of African people being transported across the Atlantic in slavery. And the man had an epiphany and wrote that song, Amazing Grace. Amazing Grace. And here our people are celebrating that song, but refuse to accept the fact that our ancestors gave us all of the spiritual symbols that have been co-opted by the Europeans, starting with the so-called Washington Monument. This is one of our most sacred spiritual symbols. The Washington Monument is a replica of one of our most sacred spiritual symbols. Mm-hmm. The caduceus, the symbol of the medicine profession, is one of our most sacred spiritual symbols.
Yes. Yes.
And instead of going into our spiritual consciousness, our people fight to believe the lie, and then run all over the world wearing the American flag, standing for the anthem, professing their faith in something that has been a yoke on us. And I want to share this with you right quick. One of the names of this land was Al-Morticanos. Al-Morticanos, before it was renamed the United States of. This land was granted to George Washington and the so-called founding fathers of the Constitution, which was based upon, the Constitution, by the way, is based upon the Iroquois Federation. George Washington was deeded this land by the Sultan of Morocco. He wrote a letter thanking him. And the Moors know this. Mm-hmm. The Moors know this. This is Makakubu Ali El Bey, otherwise known as Makakubu the Moor. So, the indigenous people of this land were as dark and darker than both of us. And both of us. There were laws that struck down that reality and classified us as Negro. Mm. To facilitate the enslavement of the indigenous, and you need to understand that Gautama was a part of Pangea.
You got to first convince them that Pangea exists, because some of them don't even believe that neither.
Okay. Pangea, push all the land masses together. They fit like a puzzle. Mm-hmm. That puzzle was Pangea. And as the earth shifted, see, we're talking about some dynamic here, because the dynamic of the consciousness that exists today is not the same consciousness that existed a million years ago. Our people come from a seed that had an alignment in the cosmos that was upright with the same alignment of the earth that was upright. Mm. And I'm talking mathematics now, folks. If you know upright is a 90-degree angle. This is upright. Yeah. So the earth was at 90 degrees before it began to shift. And it had to shift in order for the demonic mind to prevail. Because upright is a righteous position. That's why man stands upright. That's why a tree grows upright. But the earth, the current axis of the earth, is 23 1/3 degrees. The earth is almost on its side, folks. It's almost on its side. And our people and the world has been taught that this is the most technological advance the earth has ever been. No. This is the most demonic the earth has ever been. There's disease in the earth, and the earth is going to heal itself. And in order for us to vibrate at that frequency, our consciousness has to embrace Ma'at, truth. That's why March 23rd, March 24th, and March 25th is the Ma'at festival, the festival of truth. Because in order for us to liberate our consciousness, one has to embrace the spirituality of where our people come from. That's a beautiful question that sister dropped.
Yeah, and it's such a simple question, but yet powerful at the same time. Because at the end of the day, you know, when I talk to people, a lot of times I might drop some real deep knowledge and sciences for them. But then you always got to remember to, no matter how far out you go, to bring it back home so that they can figure out how to take that knowledge and utilize it within their own home. Because they get the knowledge and then they bring it to their significant others or their loved ones, parents, guardians, so on and so forth. And it always causes this friction, you know, because we have, like you said, we're comfortable in this space of being enslaved. Some of us don't even know that we're enslaved. And some of us, even if we were told, wouldn't want to believe it.
Right.
So there's a balance. And this is what I would have to say to you, Ms. Valdez, is if you have the knowledge and you know what's right, knowing, as they said, is half the battle. You've got half the battle won already. I would say the next level is to be a walking example of what it's supposed to look like, right? Be the change that you want to see within your family. And that example will cause others to say, you know what, it's something different about her. It's something different about her now in this new space that she's in. And I want some of that. How do I get some of that? They're not going to have any choice but to come to you because you're the one who got it. You get it? You're the one who got the sauce. It's the secret sauce. So when you bring the secret sauce home, you know, nobody gets mama's secret sauce until mama's almost gone. That's when they get the recipe and they pass it down from generation to generation. You understand? Nobody knows how to make grandma's biscuits. She just comes out with it from the back and says, this is what it's supposed to look like, baby. You understand? So that's why we stay around grandmama. We got to contact her to get the sauce. How do we get this? How do we make these biscuits, grandma? You have to be the change that you want to see within your family. And then you pass it down from generation to generation. Pass the mantle, pass the torch. You understand? This is why Brother Makaku was here. I don't know if y'all was here last week, but he passed the mantle. That's important. It's a process. It's a part of Ma'at. It's a part of maintaining balance and restoring balance here in our society and where we live today.
I want to share with you, there's a healing page on Facebook that has been established. Irshama, I-R-S-H-M-A, Irshama means the breath of the spirit. Irshama, Udama Akiyur, Irshama, Udama Akiyur, Line of the New Dawn, Udama Akiyur. That Facebook page is a healing page primarily for our sisters who have been through abusive relationships. Irshama, I-R-S-H-M-A, Udama Akiyur. Udama Akiyur means Lion of the New Dawn. The lion is our consciousness. The new dawn is the resurrection of our consciousness, Udama Akiyur. And that's what this discussion does for you. It releases the chains surrounding our thought so that those boundaries that were placed on us falsely can bring us, we can go past that and go into a realm of consciousness where you have a mind-free consciousness. Now, I want to share with you, I mentioned before, 16:19, and I mentioned the book of Genesis in the Bible that addresses our enslavement. And in the book of Genesis, God, and I don't call the creator God, but God was speaking to Abraham. And I use those names because those are the names that are in the Bible, but those weren't the names. I want to make that clear. In any event, God spoke to Abraham and said, your seed will be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and they shall serve them and afflict them for 400 years. So from 1619 to 2019, which is the year after next, is the end of that prophecy. Is the end of that prophecy. But there's an even more important prophecy that comes from this land. See, our people have been taught to discount anything that comes from this land. So nothing that our people had on this land is of any significance based upon his story. History has obliterated anything that is of significance of this land. But there is a prophecy that's over 2,000 years old from this land. It's called the prophecy of the white buffalo calf woman. The prophecy of the white buffalo calf woman says, beware the birth of the white buffalo, for the white buffalo is a sign that mankind has until the 21st day, the 21st year of the 21st century to redeem himself before the great purification. Now, let me break this down for you right quick. Let's talk about time. Right now, our people ascribe to the spell of the clock of 2017.
Yep.
2017, most of us say, well, we're in the 21st century. No. The beginning of the third millennium on the Greco-Roman calendar.
That's right.
You're in the beginning of the third millennium, the third 1,000-year period on the Greco-Roman calendar, which is based upon the birth of a man, so-called Jesus Christ. Now, what does that mean? The significance of being at the beginning of the third millennium on the Greco-Roman calendar. Well, the time construct that it is the pentagram decades. Pentagram meaning 5. Decades meaning 10 years. So the first 5 decades are known, of any new millennium, are known as the pentagram decades. Okay? So now, from 2000 to 2010 was the decade of enlightenment, as signified by the discovery of the Grand Unified Theorem by the Nigerian physicist Dr. Gabriel Oyibo. The Grand Unified Theorem is the mathematical equation that proves the very existence of the Creator. Dr. Oyibo said to me, specifically, said Makakuvu, the Grand Unified Theorem is contained in the Meduna chair. This is what he said to me. So from 2000 to 2010, the decade of enlightenment. From 2010 to 2020 is the decade of redemption. It's very important because I just told you. The white buffalo calf, the prophecy of the white buffalo calf woman says that mankind has to the 21st day of the 21st year of the 21st century to redeem himself, which is the end of the decade of redemption. The decade of redemption was signified by the election of Barack Obama as president in 2008, coming into the decade of redemption. Beyond the decade of redemption, from 2020 to 2030, is the decade of manifestation. See, you go to church every day, and they tell you in church that you can be redeemed. Redemption is not for you. Redemption is not for you. Redemption is for those of fallen humanity. So if you are manifested with the grace and mercy of the Most High, some of you call them blessings.
Right. Okay?
But when you study the root word of blessing, it's a German word that means blood sacrifice. So I don't use that term. It's air im P, through the manifestation of the Most High, line of the new door. So those who are manifested with the grace and mercy of the Most High in abundance, our redemption is to take that abundance, is to apply it to fallen humanity. So now, the decade of manifestation is where those acts to lift fallen humanity manifest themselves. Then you have the decade of judgment, because there are people who seek not to be redeemed, and you're seeing that every day through the presidency of the United States and Donald Trump, through the Republican Party. They choose not to be redeemed, and they're working very hard to manifest a doctrine of hatred. From the decade of judgment, you have the decade of retribution. So that's the first 50 years. That takes you to 2050. 2050.
What was that website that you mentioned again?
Urshima.
Urshima.
IRSHMA. Urshima Udama Akiyo. It's a Facebook page. It's a healing Facebook page.
Spell it one more time.
IRSHMA. Okay. Urshima means breath of the spirit. Breath of the spirit of the line of the new dawn. Urshima Udama Akiyur, line of the new dawn, Udama Akiyur. It's a Facebook page for our sisters and brothers now, because brothers, our mental condition is such that the acts that we commit put a strain on our sisters.
So, with that being said, it's our final 2 minutes. That's almost my time. I'm looking at your comments. Ebony, I see you. I see you, Queen. Just email me, jamarmilton@gmail.com, and I will send you that PDF. And I see another question in here. And brother, I didn't get to answer your question, but I will in the future. Stay tuned. The one that asked about fraternities and how it serves our community. I'm going to get into that on a future show, without a doubt. I'm not in a fraternity, but I do know people that are, and that is a good topic for the future that we may speak on. And Michael McGee says he likes how you're getting into his question about ancestors' prophecies, you know, and about our situation. I think that that's key. You know, it's something that we have to touch. You know, everything that we do, we try to correspond with our ancestors. You know what I mean? That's the whole point. Everything that we have here, and I always tell people this is not my knowledge. This is not my kukuvu's knowledge. This is the ancestors' knowledge that was left for us, and it's our responsibility to pass it on. It's our responsibility first to listen, and then retain it and pass it on. Because if we don't, who will? You know, and they have the knowledge. You know, everybody other than us has our knowledge, and they pass it on to their children, and they utilize it how they see fit. So, with that being said, thank y'all for tuning in to this week's episode of the Lighthouse. Next week we should have Brother Garfield. We'll be talking about Bitcoin, and we'll be talking also about cryptocurrency. I appreciate y'all for coming in. I appreciate Brother Makakuvu for coming in once again.
And keep those dates in mind. March 23rd, 24th, and 25th.
Yes.
The Ma'at Festival, Shrine of the Black Madonna, the Festival of Truth, Udma Akiyu, Line of the New Dawn.
And I will be there. I'll be in Atlanta, Georgia, so you can come see us. Maybe we'll have a meet and greet or something, go to breakfast or dinner or something, and we'll hang out with you guys like we did at the Black Power Awards. With that being said, may the divine force in me greet the divine force in you. Peace, family. Ashe.